Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Our research-backed videos are engaging, easy to follow, and they help ease the daily challenges like agitation and anxiety so that you can focus on connection and joy. Available by subscription on mobile and TV apps, Zinnia makes every day a little bit easier. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled that you can join us today. We are going to be talking about why dementia behaviors make sense once you understand the brain. We'll learn how caregivers can interpret those behaviors and discover a better way to support their person with dementia. If it's family or if it's professionals, I think this will be wonderful for everyone. And of course, I want to recommend that everybody scoot over to alzheimersspeaks.com and also dementiamap.com. Those are free resources that you can go ahead and check out to be able to support you on your journey. And if you happen to provide a service, product, or tool and want to be added, just reach out to me at Lori@Alzheimer's Speaks, and I can help you with that process. So with no further ado, let's meet our guest. Well, Carlyn, thank you so much for joining me today on Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm really excited about our topic here today about behaviors and understanding the brain. And so I am first going to ask you, if you don't mind, to introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Lori, first of all, for having me. I'm really honored. I've been listening to several of your most recent guests, and you have a great selection and a wide variety. So I'm just really honored that you chose me to come on today. A little bit about myself. My name is Carlyn Lenfestey. I'm in my 25th year as a physical therapist. Grew up in Maine and went to college and met my husband. And then in the last 5.5 years, we relocated to South Florida. So I've been avoiding those bad winters that you guys have up there in Minnesota. And then the last, I would say probably 15 years of my work has been specifically with people living with dementia and helping their caregivers. I worked in a veterans home for 11 years. I've done hospital work, skilled nursing, memory care, all of it. And so much of what I have seen is just not enough support and education, not just for caregivers, but also for professional staff. And so I'm on a mission to change that.
Wonderful. Well, this is a great spot to be at. Can you tell us personally, have you been touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends?
Yes, I have. Back in, I was somewhere probably around second, third grade. My grandfather was the first person who I ever knew to have dementia. At the time, we didn't have a diagnosis. This was over 30 years ago now. So we just knew that he had some type of dementia. And I just remember seeing how gradually initially and then how quickly things began to change, and his personality and his connection. He and I were very close. He hung the moon for me. Mm-hmm. And then as things progressed, I watched my grandmother care for him tirelessly. with no support at that point. Definitely no home health support, no real information from his doctor. There were no community resources, and certainly the internet was not a thing. And so she had nowhere to go. We weren't really understanding what was happening. All I saw was the man I knew and loved forgetting us. And then subsequently, my remaining 3 grandparents developed one form of dementia or another. And so I've seen how harmful the disease process is, how much time and attention it takes to care, and just how exhausting that is, and how scary it is, and how you never really feel like you're doing enough, and you feel like you're flying blind half the time. And so I get it. I've been there, and I've also, learned to, some of my families that I've worked with and those residents, especially my veterans, they became like family to me, especially during COVID. So it has touched me very personally.
That's a lot in one family, but I think the more we ask that question, the more we're going to hear that. There's, I know the thing is, well, you have to have this gene, and I'm like, no, I don't think you do. From my support groups, they can, a lot of them have big families, and they'll say 7 out of 11 have had dementia, but it's not a question that we've asked. So I think the interpretation of that is going to really change as we continue to open up the conversation and allow families to have a voice and be part of this.
That's key. And I think they haven't for a very long time.
Yeah, I know that's what got me stepping into this, was to raise the family's voice and the person diagnosed, so it's equal to all those professionals out there, because they're the ones living it day in and day out. They know what the symptoms are. They know what their needs are. I think much more so than our professionals many times do.
Yeah, they're learning on the job.
Yeah. They know the diagnosis, but they don't understand the everyday living with it process and the toll it can take physically, emotionally, financially, the whole gamut there.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the work that you are doing today, supporting caregivers and professionals. And I'm assuming that was shaped kind of from your own family experience, like, this gotta change.
For sure. I just vividly remember how lonely the process was, and frustrating, because people didn't have the answers to the questions that we had. And like I said, there was really nobody there to support. We did not have PCAs. We did not have home health nurses at the time. And when he was hospitalized, that was a whole other issue. And because nobody really knew, one, what dementia was much, and two, how to even begin to help the person living with it. And secondarily, the families involved. And so I really worked to try to figure out, okay, where are the gaps? And they're far and wide. The first thing is just education. So my dad's a teacher. I have a brother who's a teacher, sister-in-law who's a teacher. So there's a lot of teachers in my family. So I have a teaching heart. And that's one of the first things, is just really making people understand what dementia is and what it isn't. I think there's such a stigma still around the diagnosis. If people even get a diagnosis these days, still at this day and age, we still have people that are being labeled with a dementia, but not necessarily a specific diagnosis. And so really encouraging families and empowering them by knowledge to ask those questions of their doctors. And if they're not getting those answers, where can they go next? I have a resource that's just kind of navigating the doctor's office, and it's questions to ask and kind of pre-work to do before you go. So you go with a lot of information that I find helpful for families, because oftentimes the doctors don't know the questions to ask. They're very much in a medical model and not in a cognitive model. And so that prepares people. So that was one thing, was just the education about what dementia is. And then, okay, what do you do with that? And, dementia is a brain disease. So we need to know about the brain and what's happening inside the brain to understand then how to help people. So it's kind of twofold there. My work is with caregivers of people living with dementia, either at home or if they're in facilities, and caregivers are still caregivers even when those people go into a facility. So working with those personal relationships and doing some coaching and educating. And then the second kind of limb of what I do is teaching professionals. I find coaching, I love the one-on-one coaching, but I'm helping one family at a time. And what I love about teaching professionals is it's just kind of far and wide, and reaching many, many, many people in every family that professional will touch. So that's kind of, I'm kind of got a lot of balls.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because so many people that I interview all around the world, they get into this because something touched them personally. Like you said, with your grandpa, and people not knowing, what dementia is. I remember when I was 13, which was a long time ago, because I'll be 67 here pretty soon. My great aunt went to a nursing home, and one day she didn't know who I was. She recognized my mom, and she recognized my little brother, who had to be dragged along because he didn't really have anything to do with her. And I was crushed that she remembered Scott and not me. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? I remember going home and crying and going, I don't ever want anyone to feel like that. And little did I know at 13, I'd be doing what I'm doing today, with all of this, but it's so devastating. And the only answer I got was similar to yours is, well, this is just aging. This is what happens when you get old. There was no answers. There wasn't any support groups. There wasn't any tools. There wasn't any products. And back then, people didn't even use the term dementia, wasn't even like born yet to the public,
right?
So it was really foreign. And, the work that you're doing, I love that you've got this navigating system for the doctor's office, because that is so critical. And I think there's such a belief that the doctors know it all, and they don't. I mean, bottom line, I would say 99% of them do not know much about the disease at all. And that even goes for some of the neurologists out there, don't have a good knowledge. And people think when they get to a specialist, but they don't know that there's all different kinds of neurologists. Maybe they're a sleep specialist. Maybe, there's all different parts of the brains and different types of things. And so it's critical getting to the right people and not just assuming that they know. Because I think when you do that, you get frustrated really fast, because sooner or later it's going to hit you that they don't, that they don't understand.
Because you're like, wait a minute, you finally feel relief that you got to somebody that is, you're hoping is finally going to fix this, even though it's not fixable, but at least lighten the load. And they don't know either. And it is very frustrating. And I think the other part of that is equity and where people live, their geographical location really impacts the access that they have to good neurologists, with a vast variety, of backgrounds in what they do, or specialties. A lot of times in rural areas, like I said, I'm from Maine originally. Things are a lot more spread out. I'm assuming probably Minnesota is not that different. And a neurologist is, specialized, but oftentimes when they have to serve such a large community, they're really generalized too. And so trying to find that one needle in a haystack that knows exactly what your person is going through and can tell you what's happening to them, and not just what's happening in the here and now, but what's coming. And that's such a big part of it too. It's not just about where those people are at right now. It's what's going to happen next, and what's going to happen the next 5 years and potentially 10 years, for some of these dementias. And so we got to change that. We got to do something better than that.
Yeah. I just interviewed a gal, Echo Bodine, who just got diagnosed, and she actually found out she had dementia by going to a neurologist, not for memory loss, because she was going to her other doctors that just kept telling her, well, you're 75, you're 77, it's normal. But she went in for migraines, and the doctor said, let's do some other tests too. And so they did a blood test, and they're like, nope, it looks like you have Alzheimer's. And then they did a PET scan to just confirm it. So, but it happened on accident.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so it's, the tough part is everyone believes dementia all looks the same.
Yeah.
And it's so different with every single person. And then there's so many different types. And then, like you had mentioned, some of the doctors are saying, well, it's undefined. It's undefined because they've realized they've labeled people and then it's changed 3 times, and they're not preparing families for that either, that the symptoms can change, the diagnosis can change, and that you could have multiple types of dementias, not just one, two.
Yeah, 2, 3, yes. And they all look different and they all have, just how long the disease might be. An Alzheimer's disease can last a couple decades, people, if they're generally healthy. And nothing else.
My mom lived 30 years.
Yeah. And then you've got, your earlier onset or a frontotemporal, those are much more rapid. And so just planning ahead for caregivers and, especially those earlier dementias, a lot of times we're finding that sandwich generation. So you've got a caregiver who has little kids, and they're taking care of a parent, and who's working, who's got childcare. It's like, and our system's just not set up to deal with that. And the numbers are climbing, and the amount of facilities and help that's available isn't there, and I don't see it coming anytime soon. So we've got a lot of things that just by educating people will make things so much better, and we really don't have a choice at this point because there is no plan B.
Yeah,
we don't have the cures yet. Yes, we have medications that help with treating, but there's no savior coming right off for this. We've got to be dealing in the here and now and getting people to really understand what's happening. Caregivers, because they're in the middle of it, but professionals. It has to be a team approach.
Need a daily spark of hope and direction? Let the Daily Bible app from Salem Media be that spark. This free Android app delivers an uplifting verse each morning, plus reading plans, devotions, and trusted podcasts from leaders like Joyce Meyer and Rick Warren. Prefer to listen instead? The Daily Bible app reads verses, reading plans, and chapters aloud, handy for the headphones moment of your day. Choose from versions like ESV, NIV, KJV, and more, and bookmark favorites to revisit later. Share inspiring messages with loved ones right from the app. Feel God's presence in every notification. Search for Daily Bible app on Google Play and begin your day with hope, purpose, and peace.
All voices need to be heard.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of caregivers get overwhelmed with behaviors like resisting care. Like, I'm not taking a shower, or I just took a shower and they haven't taken a shower in a month, but in their mind they have, or repeating questions, agitation. I mean, the list can kind of go on and on. It could be wandering, it could be all kinds of things.
Yeah.
How does understanding the brain help people respond differently to those moments?
So kind of backing up to really like, okay, what is dementia, right? We talk about it's an umbrella term, and we have Alzheimer's, and we have all these different things. But really, if you break it down, dementia is just damage to multiple parts of the brain to the severity, to the point that function is impacted. That's really what's going on. So I really pull back and start with function. And the way I'm a visual person, and I think it's good for people to have kind of those few anchors in what they're doing to really help ground themselves, especially at 3 a.m. when things are really upside down. And I call it the wheel of function. And so if you think about a bike tire, and you have the rubber outside part of that tire, if we think of that as function, and then we have the spokes, and spokes really, the whole point of the spokes is just to support the tire, right? To keep it from collapsing, making it roll smoothly. And so I break it down into that. We have function, and then we have, okay, what are the different components of what people need to be functional? And so you've got the sensory components, so touch, taste, smell, all those sensory inputs that people have to process. The next would be their emotions. So are they in a good mood? Are they paranoid? Are they frustrated? All of those things going on. Their physical would be the next component or spoke. And so that would be like, okay, what's their strength? What is their range of motion? How is their balance? Do they typically lose their balance? Have they had many falls? Do they use an assistive device? Are they people that like to get up and move, or we label those as wanderers? So that kind of stuff. And then that fourth component is really the most important, and then it's function. And function is the driver of cognition. And cognition is the driver of function. And so understanding, okay, what's going on cognitively with the person, how is their memory, how is their attention, how are they doing understanding language, how are they doing verbalizing, using their language, how are they sequencing, how are they problem solving, all those things, right? And so that's a lot. But if any one of those things is not working well, and usually with any type of dementia, it's more than one of those things aren't going well, that tire's not going to roll down the road very well. And so function's going to be impacted. So that's really where I start with understanding, okay, this is the brain, all these different things are happening, what's going on with the person, how are they presenting, and that's where we kind of dig deep, because I think the misconception is with a behavior that they're giving us a hard time, right? They're refusing to bathe, they are refusing to eat, they are refusing to take their meds, right? There's all the outward behaviors. And what I think is really important for understand is all behavior is communication, because of the lack of the ability or the difficulty for those people verbalizing what they're struggling with. And so that's their way of communicating it. So that's really where I start, because if you can kind of back up and take it less personally and go, okay, they're not giving me a hard time, something in their brain they're struggling with right now. And so what is it? And that's how we're going to approach any situation.
Yeah, I like the wheel of function and how you've broken down the spokes and stuff. I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. I will push back on one word that you're using.
Yeah.
And that's just the word behavior, because I think that word sets a bad stage for things, but it's something that we've used all our lives. We've never looked at it any different. But when you think of dementia, and especially if someone's gotten to a stage where they're aggressive and they're pushing back a lot, being told you have a behavior over and over and over is not helping, because that's an old word that they probably know, that they should be in the corner with a dunce cap and they're worthless. And just think how that makes us feel. So I'm kind of on this thing to get people to try to change the word behavior to a reaction, because they have an unmet need and they don't know, getting back to communicating, they don't know how to communicate it.
Exactly.
And to me, I think that also helps people step back from, she's pushing my buttons, she always knows how to get my buttons, and she's just, doing
it on purpose. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like, no, that connection's lost. Typically,
I don't have the problem solving to do that.
And again, there's different phases in that, but I think that the visual itself is really good, and then all the specifics I think is super helpful to get people to understand what's going on and then the why behind that. And I loved that, one of your first spokes was the sensory component, because I'm on a big kick for that, for sensory care. I just don't think people understand it or appreciate it. It's kind of like music. Music can have such a great effect on us, and we can really leverage that with dementia. Yeah. And we all leverage it in our day, if it's in the car or wherever, but we're so used to having it so handy, we don't see it as a tool.
It's a huge tool. It's probably the biggest tool we have in our toolbox.
Yeah. And same with lighting and sound and temperature control. All of our touch, our tone of voice, all of those things are so critical, and we use them all the time. We're constantly reading a whole body. We're not just listening to words. We're listening to tone. We're, looking at, are they rolling their eyes? Do they have the big, here we go again going on? Or, but we take it for granted, and we don't realize that we do that. And then there's this other piece, I think, where people have been taught that a person with dementia, that they can't learn. They can't process that. And people with dementia tell me all the time, and we've heard this from so many different eras, when you talk with somebody, look at them, because they're reading your face. They're reading your lips.
And they're really good at it.
And they'll be the first to say, I didn't know I did that before my dementia, but that really helps me put the pieces to the puzzle together. And I think it's just I really do. I think we take so many things for granted when they're working smooth, and we don't break them down because, as if you're dealing with a small child or an older person, if you go in agitated, they're probably going to end up mirroring that back to you.
Yep, exactly. It's all so much about approach. So that if we go into it with that behavior label and we're not looking at it as really what it is communication of their expression of what they're trying to let us know, then yeah, we have a bias in our brains that we gotta undo. It's a huge paradigm shift, for people, caregivers, family caregivers and professional caregivers. I think we're all transitioning with that. But I think the biggest thing is, like you said, when you label something like a behavior, you write people off. And so if you're looking at it like, no, they're communicating with me, it's an expression.
Yeah.
You start to be able to affect real change.
Yeah. Well, and then we can address it from a positive approach and go, okay, cognitively, they can't solve this. So it's really up to me. And sometimes things are so simple. So simple to change. And I think everyone, when a chronic illness hits, I mean, nobody wants that, but we have to adapt to change. And that's what we do in all stages of our lives, but we don't give ourselves credit for that. But then the disease hits, and then it's like, no, I just want to hold tight to where we were right before we got this diagnosis, because life was perfect then, and life was not perfect then. It's more perfect than with the diagnosis, but I just see people kind of, burrow in and not want to budge with adaptation. And we are creatures of habit. We like to do what we've always done. But again, when it's not working, it's not going to change if we don't change because they're unable to change.
Exactly. Yeah. That is the key. Like we have to evolve as they evolve, right? Yeah. We're going to continue to change, and what worked yesterday, might not work next week. And so you constantly have to be pivoting.
Yeah, and developing those tools. Now, one thing I want to ask you, because people with dementia have told me, and I just thought this was really interesting. They said, Lori, think of it like this. Our brain is like Swiss cheese. It's got holes in it. Yeah. But from moment to moment, we don't know where those holes are going to be. So you might be able to tell me this now and I'll get it. In 10 minutes, I might not. And tomorrow it might work again. Yeah. And I think that's, I saw that with my own mom who lived with the disease for 30 years and many other people that I've worked with. But I think we have been taught as a society, if it doesn't work, throw it out. Try something new. And again, it's kind of reading the room and the situation is what I found. But what is your thought on that?
Absolutely. I think there's a few things there. I think the tendency for us is to jump in and when they're having trouble, help them or do it for them because we don't want them to struggle. But that takes away their autonomy and dignity and all of that. And so, and the other part is what isn't working or what didn't work maybe today. Maybe there are other circumstances like that wheel, right? Well, maybe there's a sensory component going on. There's a nagging noise in the background, or, the tag in their shirt is driving them crazy. And so they can't get beyond that point. Or maybe they have a migraine. Maybe their hearing's not great. When's the last time we take people to get hearing tests and get hearing aids? We found that cognition declines when people don't have their hearing. That's a sensory input that's very, very important for people. So I think that's kind of where it goes back to is looking at, okay, what's going on in the here and now? Yes, we know the disease process is changing and that there are holes there and things are going to kind of ebb and flow, but what is happening right now? And is there something that we can help as a support to kind of build up some of those other spokes to then help the person along? I teach a lot of hospital staff, and some of the worst places for people to go is into the hospital. They're confined in the bed, and we don't let them up to use the bathroom, we don't let them up to get up and walk, and we do for them, and we do for them, and we do for them. And what we have is this learned helplessness, and it doesn't take long. It's just a day 2 days, 3 days, and we find that people lose those skills if we just do them for them. And so we have to do alongside, we have to partner with people and let them do what they can for themselves and then help them along. If they're just not able to do it because it's a sequencing issue, okay, then we give them, they're stopping midway because they don't know, how to open the toothpaste. Doesn't mean the person is refusing or won't brush their teeth anymore. They might just not be able to sequence that task, or, you tell somebody to go do something, but you've given them 3 directions all at once and they can't process what you said and remember it long enough to go and do it. So, it's really kind of taking a step back and going, okay, what is going on? How can we be helpful? What might be falling apart? Where is their brain struggling? Where are they in their dementia process? That's why staging is so important. And then really giving them the opportunity to at least try and not jump in and take that away from them. I think we have a misconception that people can't do things, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. They have a lot of skills left, very, very far into the disease process. We just need to allow them to try and in a safe manner.
And then adapt. If they can't do the whole thing the way they used to, they can still partake in something. Okay. I had a situation with my dad with cancer, so it wasn't his memory, but we were going on a trip and we were packing. And we were going on a cruise. And so I did one big suitcase for him and my mom. Mm-hmm. And when it came time to leave to go to the airport, my dad wanted to get the suitcase and he couldn't because it was too big. And I remember, putting it in the trunk, and he was right there. He had a clicker, but he didn't have the keys to the car because we didn't want him driving anymore. Mm-hmm. So he's clicking it open, and I lifted it up. And I just remember looking at his face and how disappointed he was. And it would have been nothing for me to pack 2 bags, a smaller one that he would have given him the dignity of being the man.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
And taking care of some of that stuff. And I will never, ever forget that. And I think we kind of have to think about that stuff with people with dementia. It's being inclusive and giving them purpose. And, we all want to be accepted and be part of, because I don't think most families feel like we complain when they turn into a wallflower and they're not in the conversation anymore and they've withdrawn. And it's like, we've kind of put them in the corner because we're finishing their sentences because they're not going fast enough, or they're not answering correctly or whatever it might be. And so they choose not to embarrass themselves or anyone else or feel put down and know that they're going to get angry. So they're just going to withdraw.
Yeah, which spirals into all kinds of other problems, right? Depression and just complete apathy. And then everything is it's hard to get, at that point, it's hard to get it back.
So I really do, I agree with you. I think a lot of this is education, but shifting perceptions of what the disease is and what we can do for the person and for the family.
Yes.
And the professionals, dealing with this is really important. I wanted to talk about your educational training because you also offer a way to become a certified dementia practitioner. So why don't you kind of define that first, and then we can talk about who attends and, what they'll gain from a certification like that?
Okay. So yes, it's a certified dementia practitioner credential, CDP. You'll see it after people's names sometimes. And the seminar that I teach is from the National Council of Certified Dementia Practitioners. It was just the curriculum for that seminar was just recently approved by the Alzheimer's Association. So that was a big deal. They go through a rigorous process. It gets reviewed, sent back and forth, and then finally you get that approval. And it just gives a lot of credibility to the seminar and to the organization. And I had to go through the training to become a CDP and then the training to become the CADDCT, which is long for I train. I get to teach the seminar and credential others. It's an 8-hour course. It can be done all at one day. I like to break it up over 2 days because I find that it's a lot of information. And I also like to give a little bit of homework for people to try some things out from week one and then or day one, and then come back and we chat. It's very interactive, and I try to keep the group size small so that we have a lot of time to really talk about specific scenarios, problem solve, share our experiences, things like that. The seminar, after people go, they will get a certificate of attendance, and then they have a choice. They can just finish there, or if they want, they can apply to the NCCDP for that credential. They need to have some background working with people in dementia care. I believe it's for about a year, but it can be physicians, it can be nurses, case managers, social workers, PCAs, lab people, anything clinical. They can go for that credential, but it's offered to anyone. Families can go, non-clinical people, just people who are store owners, who have patrons that come in and have dementia. It's really for everybody, and it's very much a teaching type seminar. So by the time people get all the way through it, they have a really good understanding, and not just an understanding, but okay, now what do I do with this? And how can I teach other people and show other people? So I do offer that. I'm usually a couple times every season. And I just, like I said at the beginning, one of the things I think that I can do is by reaching many more people is by educating staff, so that then that person is going to touch several people, and then there's just that ripple effect.
Yeah, that modeling effect and stuff that goes on, which is really, really important. I would love to see more medical professionals be certified, because I just find such a lack in most areas. I mean, like you said, every now and then you'll get someone who's exceptional, but my experience and what I hear through my support groups is that it's very rare.
And the level of teaching and information too, there's a lot of quality variance between what different facilities or organizations do. We have federal requirements, but they're pretty loose, and so sometimes it's a webinar. People are just going to and sitting through a webinar or a PowerPoint, and they're just clicking through and checking, yep, I finished it. You cannot understand or implement any of that until you've had a chance to really talk things through, share experiences, get some of that feedback, and really understand from the brain inside out and what's outwardly happening with that person. So that's why I really do love teaching the seminar, is because it does that. It really goes all the way, starts back at the anatomy without getting too medical. It's really easy for any group to understand, and then goes through, how to do it. We talk about all different scenarios. Usually the group is pretty diverse, from whether it's memory care or hospitals or things like that. Tends to be more memory care because the regs have them, they have to do it. Hospitals, not so much, unfortunately, and I think that's a big gap. So where I work, I do a lot of teaching for our for our hospital. So that's one of my goals, is just to get as many of them certified as possible.
When you do that, I know Gary LeBlanc started, kind of training hospitals and doing a purple. He actually got the purple angel, which is just a symbol for dementia, on the bands themselves.
Yeah.
Which I think is really smart. So people see this angel with the globe, and right away they can recognize, okay, this person has dementia, because I think so often people don't read the charts when they walk in the room, and they don't really know what's what. And I've seen some hospitals, not all, where they are providing either a volunteer or staff to sit with a person who's got dementia, so that they don't wander off, or they don't get out of bed when they're not supposed to, because they've got a broken hip or hooked up to IVs or whatever it might be. Because families can't always be there. And some people don't have family.
Exactly. And sometimes that caregiver, that's the first break they've had.
Yeah.
And so I always try to remind people, like, don't assume, don't judge that caregiver because they're not sitting at the bedside the entire time that person's here. They're probably sleeping for the first time in a long time through the night.
Yeah.
So we have to step back and also look at the caregiver and what their needs are, and really talk to them too. I think I love when I walk in a room and I see a piece of paper that says, "Hey Dad, you're in the hospital and I'm coming to see you later," or whatever, and it's telling a little bit of a story to just help them orient, not necessarily to the time and the date and all that, but where they are, and that they're safe, and that their person knows they're there and they're coming. And just something little like that is so powerful. And then, I'm like, that's gold. Make sure that does not get lost. Make photocopies. If it gets coffee all over it, get a new one. The work is to just be like, oh, or when somebody gives a list of information about a person, their preferences and all that, and it's like, oh, thanks, and then it gets stuck in a chart, and it's like, that did nothing for anybody. So I think just being aware of that, and I think that purple band is a great visual for people. But then once they know, it's one thing to know that the person has dementia, then what? And not assuming that because they have dementia that they're going to act X, Y, Z, or that everything that happens in the hospital is because they have dementia, and just write it off. Like, we really need to be careful. And if they're coming to the hospital, chances are something's going wrong. And then, is it delirium? Is there something happening? Is there an infection? All those questions that we need to ask from the beginning and do some investigating. So we're making sure that we're not writing anybody off, and that we're just assuming that, oh, it's just their dementia. No, it's, this could be a very different person than who came from home and what's going on. So all of that.
Yeah, and a simple thing like a UTI can like totally change a person's personality and things, and people don't realize that. I know I didn't until my mom experienced, and I'm like, no, you're overdosing her. I mean, look at her. Her head's flopping and her eyes are rolling in her head. I know what that looks like, blah, 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 blah. They're like, no, Lori, it's probably a UTI. And I'm like, well, then you better do a test and you better get it done quick. And they called the next day and they're like, yep, it was a UTI. And, 24 hours later, she was back to herself, engaged and stuff. But, no one ever told me the different types of things that could happen just with a UTI.
Dehydration.
Yeah.
A change in a medication or a kidney stone. I mean, it's a myriad of things that could be going on. And thankfully, your mom had you as an advocate, but if they came from a facility and there's nobody checking in and letting the doctors and the nurses know what that person's baseline is like, they very easily can miss a delirium. And then we have a big problem.
Well, and the thing that killed me though, too, with that was I had to complain about it. If they knew that's what it was, why wasn't the test ordered already?
Yeah, it should have been one of the first things they did.
They all saw it. They knew exactly what I was talking about, but nothing had been ordered. And so, getting families to understand that they have to be the advocate, no matter where you are. It's like you still sometimes, I hate to say it, yell and scream, but sometimes that's what it takes to get the attention when they don't listen to you. And I just said this on another show that I did. I had my ex-husband was in the hospital and they were going to send him home, and he didn't have dementia, but he had congestive heart failure and a lot of other things, and they wanted to send him home. And I'm like, he can't walk 6 feet from the chair next to the bathroom to the pot without assistance. How is he going to do that at home? He's got a wife with dementia and a little dog.
Yeah.
That's not going to work, and he's on oxygen now full time. Well, he's got a 50-foot cord. Oh, and that's not a tripping hazard? Let's think about, it was just like,
a clear cord.
and so it was like, sometimes as families, I think we have to sit back and go, does that make sense? Because just because they're telling us it will be safe doesn't mean it's going to be safe or good or work in your situation and stuff. So yeah, we're getting there. Everybody's kind of chomping at the bit, a little here and a little there. And but it would be nice if hospitals, like, this was just a basic thing at one of the conferences for the doctors and for their clinicians, because it's so prominent. Like you said, diagnosed or not, they are seeing these symptoms, and how do they deal with that so that they can serve these people to the best of their ability?
Yeah.
It really is something. Now, you name your business A Better Way Dementia Care Solutions, which I love. It really sets the stage up. What can you do through your coaching that will really help families? Because I still think families are hesitant with caregiver coaches, and most of them don't even know they exist. And so then on top of that, it's like, what the heck do they do? And how much is it going to cost me? And all of those, and then they get to the cost, and then sometimes that just stops them right there.
Yeah.
And, but yet they're so overwhelmed, and they can spin and spin and spin. And everyone who I've heard who has used a coach is just like, oh, thank you. They saved my life, and they saved our relationship.
Need a daily spark of hope and direction? Let the Daily Bible app from Salem Media be that spark. This free Android app delivers an uplifting verse each morning, plus reading plans, devotions, and trusted podcasts from leaders like Joyce Meyer and Rick Warren. Prefer to listen instead? The Daily Bible app reads verses, reading plans, and chapters aloud, handy for the headphones moment of your day. Choose from versions like ESV, NIV, KJV, and more, and bookmark favorites to revisit later. Share inspiring messages with loved ones right from the app. Feel God's presence in every notification. Search for Daily Bible app on Google Play and begin your day with hope, purpose, and peace.
With who I was caring for, because I was really broken, and I didn't know how to fix it, and they gave me a calmness back.
Yeah, out of chaos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the point. Is there's a few, so that came from a few different places. When I think about just our own family's situation and the lack of support, the lack of education and all this, and just thinking like, there's got to be a better way, right? This is madness. There's got to be a better way. And so that was kind of the one part. And then the Maya Angelou poem, you do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. Every caregiver, I believe, is doing the very best they can with what they know. Unfortunately, as a medical group of people, we're not getting them the information that they need quickly enough, extensively enough, broadly enough, over time. And so I really believe that if we can do that, then they're going to know better, they're going to do better. And like you said, that's where maintaining that relationship with the person that you're caring for really happens. It's in the 3 a.m., things are falling apart and you just want to scream, and it's like, there's got to be a better way, and there is. And that's just by getting that education, trying to implement it. And if coaching is a part of what can help, sometimes it's just one session of just, okay, what are the biggest pain points? I go, okay, right back to that wheel of function, what's happening. And then it has to be person-centered. That's the other part of it is, it's a better way. It's not the way. There's no one way to treat somebody with dementia. There's no one approach that's going to work for everybody. It's not cookie cutter. I wish it were. It's just not. And so that's where that person-centered care comes in. And that's another part I use when I'm teaching or coaching is, I think of my grandfather, so the first person in my world. And I think about what are 3 things about him that really remind me of him and that were just really unique to him. So one of the things, he was a business owner. He had a store, and in the back of his store, he had a bowling alley. And when we were going through their house, this is long after he had died and just after my grandmother had passed, we were going through things in the house, and we found a tote with all these bowling pins, these beat up, musty candle pins. And there were just enough in there so myself and all of my cousins were able to have one. So that's one thing. And then another would be a can of sardines. He was not able to go into the military because he had some health things, but he was part of kind of what we would call, I guess, the civil service. So they went into the woods and they cut, trails, and, they really helped stateside when so many of the men were away. And so when you're gone a lot, you eat a lot of tin food, tin fish. And so when I would go over, this is much after he had done that, but we would sit on the couch and have sardines on saltines, which now I think, ooh, but we would sit on that sun porch on that green vinyl couch, and you bite into that and the cracker just kind of breaks up everywhere, but he would just lift up the cushion and brush it under the crumbs under the cushion, and his eyes would be twinkling. And so I think about that every time I go through the grocery store and I see that can of sardines. I think, oh, that's my grandpa. And then just a bag of change. So he, like I said, he was a business owner. He through the Depression, and so that was really tough. He dealt everything in cash. He did not do credit. If he didn't have the money, they didn't have it. And then as he kind of got older and more successful, one thing that he loved to do was collect coins. And I can remember those cardboard
the little books.
With the little books, and he and my dad and my uncle did that together. And I remember how proud he was of his coin collection, and what that meant, especially someone who had owned a business and gotten through the Depression. So I think of those 3 things, and like those 3 things about my grandpa, if I went into any home that I was helping coach in, or, if you took them to your house, those would not work with your person, right? It has to be very personal to them. And that's what I encourage my families to do. They know all those things. They might not just know to access them all the time. And then I think when I'm talking with professionals, I say, with every patient that you have, find out 3 things like that about them. And those are going to be your ways that you're going to connect with that person. And so it has to be person-centered, because like I said, it's not cookie cutter. And that's where kind of that paradigm shift is coming in much more into that person-centered care. It goes much more beyond just, what is dementia? This is the brain. This is your brain on dementia. Any questions? To, okay, now what? Now we have to know the person. Now we have to implement who they are into their care, and then pivot and use those things to do so.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. Are you part of a guide program at all?
I am not. There are a lot of different groups in my area who do it. Number one, you have to be certified and approved through Guide. And then there's groups that kind of are operating within that. So right now it's a kind of a trial period for a couple years. I'm hoping that as they find it to be successful, because I think it is a very important tool for families, I'm hoping that it will expand, because a big part of that is education. So what I'm looking to do is partner with organizations that may be part of the guide, but they need to educate their staff, because part of guide is they get a care navigator, and they also get education and support, and it's really important. And also they can get respite care. So if people are going in to their home to help care for them, or they're going to be going into a facility, we need to make sure that those people are equipped with the knowledge and the expertise and the skills and the confidence to really support those people. Otherwise, it's just another program.
Yeah. Well, and I would like to see the definition they're using for respite care, because I know when I talked with many who started, this started a year ago,
Yeah.
in July, they all of them were excited about adult day. The doctors were, they had never heard about adult day, and it was just like, well, that's nice, but most of them went out of business over COVID and haven't popped back up. And they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And the ones that came back have shorter hours that don't help the caregiver and the family as much, because it's more driving and they really don't get that much time off. But I would love to see respite to include caregiving coaching, because when you are educated and you're talking to someone knowledgeable and they are calming you down, that is refueling, the caregiver, which is, this isn't just about putting them in adult day and keeping them busy. It's really to help the caregiver recenter. And so I think that needs to be broadened in terms of what does that look like, and what does that add to the family dynamic in terms of caring for somebody. And that's not to put down adult day by any, shape or form, but it is maintaining someone's sanity and letting them be heard and letting them feel relaxed, or to be able to breathe. Like, I don't do coaching per se. I talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, that just makes me feel so better. You really seem to understand.
Just be heard and understood. It's so small, but they have not had that. And it's not acceptable. Yeah.
And to be able to have those alternatives, I think is really, really, really something. The other thing, and again, this is just a pet peeve of mine, but I'm on a mission to kind of switch some of this, is the verbiage person-centered care. And I know it's huge, but I still think there's a big disconnect with families. People in the industry know that, because it's been kind of shoved down their throat that this is what we're doing and this is a criteria we have to meet. But families, I still don't think they understand what that means. And so a term that I use and other people have used things similar to this is relationship-based care. It gets them back to being in a relationship, because I think when we care, anyways, I know for me, I got so task oriented. I was just a taskmaster, boom, boom, boom. And then I even found that I was doing things to make me feel better, that I was doing something for them for a disease that didn't have a cure. And I didn't even know that until I kind of ripped it apart and said, no, this isn't working anymore. I have to focus on, are they safe? Are they happy? Are they pain-free? And then do my tasks. And then it was like, oh, if I focus on this, it's easier to let other people come in and help me too. I mean, it just switched everything, and it let me be a daughter who could sit on the couch with no words and just be content sharing space with them.
Yeah.
But it's those little things, I think, when you're able to coach them, to bring the calm and let them know it's okay to relax, it's okay to breathe. And most people with dementia have told me, I don't want to be busy all the time.
Yeah.
I like to relax before my dementia. I still do, because we stress them out when they see us panicking and running around and trying to get everything done. And the last thing, especially for people in earlier stages, the last thing they want to be is a burden.
Need a daily spark of hope and direction? Let the Daily Bible app from Salem Media be that spark. This free Android app delivers an uplifting verse each morning, plus reading plans, devotions, and trusted podcasts from leaders like Joyce Meyer and Rick Warren. Prefer to listen instead? The Daily Bible app reads verses, reading plans, and chapters aloud, handy for the headphones moment of your day. Choose from versions like ESV, NIV, KJV, and more, and bookmark favorites to revisit later. Share inspiring messages with loved ones right from the app. Feel God's presence in every notification. Search for Daily Bible app on Google Play and begin your day with hope, purpose, and peace.
Right. And doing that, we're making them feel like they're a burden to us. And then they worry about, gosh, if they get sick, trying to care for me because they're running around, like a headless horseman, I don't want to lose them. I don't want to do that to them. So then that causes them more stress, which can trigger those reactions or behaviors. And so it's this whole big cycle of understanding and looking at everybody where we're at in this, instead of looking at somebody and go, you're dementia. That's all you are anymore. You're not Joe, you're not John, you're not Sally, you're not Jane. You're just dementia. And it's just like, what a horrible feeling that would be, to be looked at like that. And I think so often in the medical field, like you had mentioned, people blame it. Everything gets blamed on the dementia. Well, no, maybe they were depressed before, or maybe they had this habit for years. This isn't the dementia. This is who they are.
And I think the other thing too is that the assumption that because somebody has dementia, they can't, like we talked about earlier, they can't XYZ, like can't live alone, for example. Well, that furthers from the truth, especially in the beginning. Yes, there will come a time where that is not safe, but that's not right off. It could be years, but support, yes. But alone, totally doable. People can drive, it needs to be watched for sure. But people can still drive. There's still so many things that can be done. They just need some of that support. One of the things that I'm working on, and I've done some piloting with some families, is, okay, what can you do to the house now that would make it a little safer and take some of the burden off of them too? Like not worrying so much about what's going on and are things turned off and if they've taken their medication and all those things. There are things that can be done and systems that can be put in place. So kind of doing a virtual tour of somebody's home and a little write-up about, okay, measurements and things like that. Are there throw rugs and all of that? And then kind of stepping back and going, okay, this is okay. A few little minor changes and this would make things much safer. Maybe a piece of equipment, something like that. And not just the here and now, but okay, as it progresses, you're going to want to think about some of these things. Is it a structural issue? Right? Is, some of these things that if you want to keep them home as long as possible, is a caregiver going to be coming in at some point? Does somebody have been with them? And if that's the case, okay, what's coming in and what can be done? But the assumption that, well, they got a diagnosis, they can't live alone anymore. We have to, somebody's got to move in with them. And, that's not necessarily true. And so by overdoing that, that's going to fracture a relationship real quick, especially if it's too much too soon.
Oh,
again,
exactly.
It has to be what the person needs. And I think when person-centered it's more that, not the kind of the trite thought of it, but like, no, it really is about where that person is at. Yeah, where they're going, but they're not there yet. We're here. And what can you do right in the here and now to make things safer, more successful, cognitively, more appropriate for them. And then, things might change down the road and we know they will, but that's not now, but we can plan ahead. Because I think that's also a very big thing. It's like, okay, guys, this is what's happening right now. And some things might be going quite smoothly, but this is going to change. What's next? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about having people coming in or whatever it might be? Really kind of having those conversations and planning for that long haul and making them a part of it while they still can be. I think that's the other thing. It's they have the ability to be part of those decisions being made. Let them be. And have them be a part of it and make decisions about what they want in their home and colors on the wall and all those things now while they still can. And I think that that's another way to just maintain that relationship.
Well, and even a lot of them say, I want to talk about where I'm going to live if I have to move. So let's go tour. Some of them are really open to doing that. Or some of them have done letters or videos saying, okay, if you feel it's not safe for me to drive, I'm going to define what that means to me. And I might not recognize myself later on down the road in the video or know that that's my handwriting, but hopefully it will give you some peace that I agree with you.
Yeah.
When I have all the pieces. The other phrase I was going to bring up was, when we're caring for people, especially people who live alone, a lot of them take their friends or family who are helping them as their backup brain. And so it's not the takeover brain that seems to be when we live with somebody, we just take over a lot of times. but putting it in that I am here to support you and I am your backup. I am not here to live your life and tell you how to do everything. I think from a family perspective, sometimes that's easier for them to imagine,
Yeah.
and granted, it can still be hard to grasp because it's like, we got to get going, we got to be here. You get on that whole thing, but it's learning that maybe we're going to start out an hour earlier than we used to get ready.
Yeah.
And, maybe we're not going to shower every day like we used to do, or, picking your battles. Like we always tell people with little kids, pick your battles, or your teenagers, everything's not going to be your way. The world would be very boring if everybody did everything just the way you want it. And realizing that diversity is what makes our relationships rich, and that we can still learn from I learned so much from my mom in her 30-year journey, and I think it made me a better person. I'm not a perfect person. I'm never going to be a perfect person. I gave up on that a long time ago.
You did.
but I can be better, and I can falter and then know, Lori, you can do better next time, because sometimes you just don't have it in you to be better.
And I think helping people understand that that's okay, because we're all on this, human journey together, and it's bumpy. And then you come in dementia, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay. Did you raise your voice? Did you rush somebody? Okay, you're human. But, okay, pick yourself up, dust yourself off. How can we do that maybe differently next time? And as long as we're constantly, pivoting, that's all we can do.
Yeah, I wrote a little children's book called Betty the Bald Chicken: Lessons in How You Care. And it's really about helping people assess, how do they want to be cared for? How do they react to others? And, sometimes we're going to be maybe a barnyard animal in this scenario that's going to run away and not able to care. And sometimes we're going to be part of the caring corral that's just going to support and not question and just be inclusive. And there's no right or wrong. I mean, even a person who does very well and is very caring, they're going to slip up, or they're going to be exhausted, or they're not going to have the financial ability, or, the bandwidth, whatever it is. And that doesn't define them. We always have another moment to choose who we're going to show up as. And, I think that helping people through coaching with that forgiveness, that patience, that guidance, that education is all so powerful. So kudos to you for all you're doing, Carlyn. It's just absolutely amazing. Do you want to give people your contact information?
Yeah. So if you want to send me an email, you can send that to Carlyn. That's CARLYN at A Better Way Dementia Care Solutions.com. And then my website is just that, A Better Way Dementia Care Solutions.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those good ones.
On your website, I believe there's like a seminar list that people can look at too.
Yeah. Yes. So the website kind of covers both caregivers, and then there's a section if you're a healthcare provider. But like I said before, even a personal caregiver can go. There's a link that will get you right to the information page, and a link to register for any upcoming ones. And then there's also a spot that if one, either you're interested, but one just went by, or you want to know what's coming, you can get on my email list, and I'll send you information about anything that's coming up.
Okay. And then did you also have a downloadable piece for kind of a quick start for caregivers?
I do. I have a quick start care guide right at the top of the website. You can grab that. It's also in my link in bio on my Instagram. And if you check out my blog, you can get it there. I drop a blog every Monday, and you can sign up for my newsletter, my weekly newsletter there too. If anyone's interested, send me an email, and I do have that PDF of the Navigating the Doctor's Office that I talked about earlier. That's a really helpful tool as well.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. Well, you are just a load of information, that's for sure. I really appreciate your time today. And I always ask our audience to be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share this episode with your peeps.
Yeah.
There are more people out there in your sphere than you know that are dealing with this that just haven't talked about it. And we need to make them feel comfortable and safe in grabbing something. And typically, they're much more likely to click on something that comes from you than maybe the news or whatever, because everybody's worried that they're going to be tracked and bothered and stuff. We don't do any of that stuff. I've been there. I'm there again in terms of being a caregiver, and I think it's really important for people to feel safe and comfortable when they're looking at things. I also want to give a plug for Q for Good. They just happen to be my webmasters. I think they do an amazing job. They speak my basic language. They took the fear of the black hole and the blue screen away because they just handle that stuff for me. They get their stuff done on time, and they're extremely reasonable. So if you're looking for somebody, check out Q for Good. And then, as always, please feel free to go to Alzheimer's Speaks free educational resources, and also Dementia Map, our global resource directory. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and we will see you next time.
Attention seniors, are you looking for a community that offers incredible benefits and stands up for your values? Look no further than AMAC. With an AMAC membership, you'll enjoy exclusive discounts on insurance, travel, dining, and shopping. Stay informed with 6 issues a year of our award-winning AMAC magazine, delivering trusted news and valuable insights. But that's not all. AMAC is committed to defending America's future by directly bringing the voices of our more than 2 million members to our elected officials. Join a community that cares about your needs and your values. For a limited time, we're offering a 1-year membership for only $1. Yes, just $1 for a year of incredible benefits and advocacy. Don't wait. Take advantage of this special offer and join AMAC today. Visit amac.us/join now. That's amac.us/join now.